welcome to Watch, Review, Repeat. This is the podcast where two best friends discuss the latest in film and television and do it all over again the following episode. My name is Colton Brown. Joining me is Andrew Meadows. Oh my, what an occasion we have here.
Yes. What an occasion. I can't believe this occasion hasn't occurred in any of the other many podcast episodes that we've put out.
There have been many. 250 plus, I believe. Or right about 250. And all 250 episodes that we have recorded to date, going back to 2017, we have not talked about the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But we are about to remedy our error. I'm very excited, and I imagine that you are as well.
I can't think of, so this is part of our, epic, kind of our epic series. I don't know if we've coined an official title for this series of bonus episodes, but if we're going to call it an epic series or whatever we choose to call it, this is part of that. We've covered ancient fictionalized things and mythological stories and that sort of thing, and we covered an historical figure I think in our last episode, Lawrence of Arabia, which is an incredible movie, but this is truly this is a fictional epic, but it is truly fucking epic. I can't think of. I mean, Lawrence of Arabia. They've all been epics. Don't get me wrong, but this is kind of like on a whole nother scale. Like this scope, and, the level next level. I mean, a trilogy of epicness. It's truly. Yeah. I mean,
no, I mean, right. So to the point of, do we have a name for this? I think that, in the past episodes that we've recorded, I've referred to things as historical epics, as our, bonus episode series centered on historical epics. Well, might as well just take that word historical, chuck it in the bin, because it does not apply anymore, and that's totally okay. Why limit ourselves to things that are historical, right? Really, Troy was barely historical. It's based off of a myth where gods were present, and they tried to make it a little bit more historical in terms of how they made that film. And there's some loose history to the myth. It would seem, at least in terms of the existence of the city of Troy, the kingdom of Troy, but really, barely a history. Gladiator, somewhat based on ancient Rome, taking some real life figures that did in fact exist, and then just weaving a completely fictional story. Lawrence of Arabia, maybe the closest, you might say, based on the story of one man, T.E. Lawrence. But as it turns out, a lot of what he wrote about himself was a little fictionalized. So really, it just makes sense to just blow the doors down and start talking about things that don't necessarily fit into this little clean box of historical epics. And yes, I mean, you don't get much more epic than The Lord of the Rings. You really don't. I mean, we've talked about, I should say, we have talked about The Lord of the Rings, technically, on this podcast, but not The Lord of the Rings trilogy. We've talked about, this is the second time in 2 days that I've already forgotten the name of the Amazon series. The Rings of Power.
The Rings of Power.
We have talked about that. So we have sort of talked about the Lord of the Rings, which isn't really the Lord of the Rings. It's sort of the pre-Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Rings. But this is the real deal, right? This is the trilogy of epic fucking movies, 3+ hour things, each of them, plus the extended editions, and you're getting into 4-hour territory with maybe Return of the King.
Truly fucking epic. Yeah. Epic by every meaning of the word,
Every meaning, yes. So you suggested it, perhaps jokingly, I think, when we were trying to figure out what should we cover for our next bonus episode. And Anna is a huge fan of the Lord of the Rings. She's read the books the books / the book, I guess, however you want to refer to it, many times. I cannot say the same for myself, but she was certainly up for it. And I said, you know what? It is about that time of year where we tend to do our annual rewatch of the Lord of the Rings movies anyway. It's been way too long since we started this podcast, and we've never really done this. It's time. It's time to do it. So this is the fourth entry on our series of epic bonus episodes. It's going to be the first in our ongoing coverage of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So we are going to treat things the same way that we've treated the other movies, doing one at a time. So on this episode, we are talking about the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, the first in the trilogy. And I think general game plan is we're going to, given that these are epic movies, pretty long movies, we live busy lives and stuff, we're going to space things out a little bit. We'll probably go back and forth between recording regular episodes and the bonus episodes. And, I think certainly by the end of the year, we'll have all three done in the books, at least in terms of recording. And we'll have a nice little mini-series within our full ongoing series of bonus episodes with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So this gives us an opportunity to not have to talk about 12 hours of stuff, in one episode. I could see us going for 3 to 4 hours doing that. We'll probably still cumulatively hit 3 to 4 hours, but we'll be able to do it
much more digestible.
Shorter, digestible form, which I think is the way to do it, for prepping for these episodes, recording these episodes, editing, certainly, all of the above. And I guess I'll say too, I'm watching the extended editions. I feel like every time I rewatch, I do the extended editions. I don't know if you are adhering to the same strategy or how you're going about things. Yeah, to me, they're just kind of that's the definitive version to me, is, more is good. This is the world where you want more. So every minute that you can stuff into these films, I'm happy with. I'm happy to see. It doesn't feel like padding. It feels like, yes, more lore, more story, more characterization, etc. So saying that out loud now. So yeah, man, fucking Lord of the Rings. I will say, let's say this is the 31st bonus episode. I should say that. I do want to explain what's going on here in terms of this being a bonus episode and how that sort of thing works before we get any further. This is a brief timed exclusive for our supporters on Patreon, patreon.com/watchreviewrepeat. If you want to become a supporter on Patreon, it's $2 a month. You'll get timed exclusive access to all of these bonus episodes, including obviously this one, and then our forthcoming episodes covering the rest of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And then you'll also get early access to all of our regular episodes. So if you are supporting us on Patreon and you're listening to this episode through Patreon before most other folk have a chance to listen to it, we want to say thank you. We really appreciate your support. And of course, if you are sometime down the road listening to this on the regular feed, a few weeks after we've recorded it, maybe after we've even recorded the next one on Two Towers, it's not too late. It's not too late to jump in, especially when we're doing 3 here. This is the first of 3. So even by the time this is up on the regular feed, you'll have ample time to be able to jump in and hear our coverage of the rest of the trilogy. So if you like what you hear here and you want to hear more, go to patreon.com/watchreviewrepeat, and that'll be my plug for now, and I'll give you another one at the end of the episode, okay? So I'm just being honest, being straight up. So we're going to do things a little bit differently on this episode compared to some of our other bonus episodes, even within this series. The Lord of the Rings is just such a... I think what I'll say for myself is, even though I have not read the books, we grew up on these films, I think, right? We were teenagers, or very, I guess,
2001
the first one came out, we were probably 10-ish, you know what I mean? So we kind of grew up, and then by the time Return of the King comes around, you're what, 12, 13,
yes.
I guess 12 or so. You're maybe a tad younger than maybe the target audience is particularly, but you're growing up through these movies, and you get raised with these movies. And I think that for the both of us, these movies hold a special place in our heart. And I think for me personally, I've just gained more and more appreciation for these movies as I've grown up, as I've had the opportunity to rewatch them. Obviously, being married to someone, and Anna, who's a huge fan, and us kind of seeing these. I probably without her would rewatch these every few years, and then rewatching them roughly every year. It's just one of those things. It's just like they don't get old. They really don't get old. Your appreciation just grows and grows and grows. What we're going to do is I thought, because there's just so much that went into these movies, I wanted to devote a little time each episode to talking about kind of what it is that makes these movies so fucking epic, right? What went into making an epic trilogy? How did this all kind of come to be? Because obviously you have the J.R.R. Tolkien, books. The source material was there, sitting there for decades and decades and decades before this movie or any of these movies got made. So how did this come to be? So we're going to split it up so that we're not just talking for a half hour about the how and all that. But each episode I'm going to try to put together a little researched section talking about kind of the making of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and the various aspects that ultimately resulted in the final product, and then we'll talk about the damn thing. So timestamps are there if you don't want to hear all that bullshit or whatever. But I encourage you to stick around. I think it's a really, really fascinating thing, really interesting subject, quite honestly. And I will also say, just as a quick shout out, our friends over at Ink to Film podcast.
Oh, I bet they put together.
They read the books and they saw the movie, and I believe that they've done a series of episodes covering each book and each movie. So they're like way in depth on this, and so there's probably a way more advanced version of this for people who are into the books, have read the books, have seen the movies many, many times. I think you'll still get value out of listening to this, obviously, but I think if you're looking for more beyond what we have to offer, check out the Ink to Film podcast. Luke and James, they certainly know their shit, and I know that they spent many an hour with the Lord of the Rings in total, and we also joined them to talk about The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, once upon a time. So go listen to that episode if you can't be sated with just the Lord of the Rings and you have to go to The Hobbit as well. I think it's probably safe to say, and I don't want to speak for Andrew, but I think he'll probably agree with me that we will probably not be adding the Hobbit trilogy to our Epics bonus episode series. So if you want to hear us talk about anything in The Hobbit, go listen to that one episode.
There's dwarves, and then there's dwarves that fuck. That is the most
true. That was sexy dwarves.
Yeah.
Is that your recollection of? That's your takeaway from our experience
right?
watching The Hobbit? It's not a bad takeaway. It's not a bad one. But before we get into the making of things, I actually do have one fun fact, if you don't mind me sharing.
Light it up, man. What do you got?
I think you took the pleasure of doing a fun fact for Lawrence of Arabia last time, so I think it's my turn, and I had one in the bag, and I was ready to go with it. And I think it's very fun. I think it's a very fun fact. So this is sort of after all of the movies have been filmed, that the 9 members of the titular Fellowship of the Ring basically commemorated their time filming the Lord of the Rings trilogy by getting tattoos. They all got tattoos, and I don't know if you've heard this story before.
No.
But if you have, sit back. You're going to listen anyway. If you haven't, well, let me. I got something to tell you. All right. So 8 of the 9 members of the Fellowship actually got the tattoos. So there's a story about the 9th, and I'll get there. The tattoo itself was a small tattoo of the word 9 in Elvish, in the Elvish language, in the Elvish script. They got it done in New Zealand after they were done filming. The 9th, the only holdout from the Fellowship was John Rhys Davies, who plays Gimli, son of Gloin, who declined to get the tattoo and sent his stunt double in his place. So technically, the whole Fellowship sort of got it, but John Rhys Davies says, I don't get tattoos. I don't do that sort of thing. Or at least I'm not getting fucking Elvish. I'm a dwarf. Maybe that's what he said. I don't know. But they all kind of got it in different spots. Elijah Wood, who plays Frodo, got it on his stomach. Sean Astin, who plays Samwise Gamgee, and Billy Boyd got them on their ankles to commemorate the Hobbit feat they wore throughout the production. Orlando Bloom got got it on his forearm. It's apparently you can actually see it in a brief shot in Pirates of the Caribbean. It's more
that?
like a production error sort of thing, but it's like an action sequence allegedly. And then I think the rest, everyone pretty much got them on their shoulders. So Sir Ian McKellen, Dominic Monaghan, Sean Bean, and Viggo Mortensen all got them done on their shoulders. But that's not all. Peter Jackson also got one. Writer-director Peter Jackson also got one. And I it's actually not part of the text I'm looking at, but I'm pretty sure he got a different tattoo in the same style, but it said 10. I think it was 10, the Elvish word for 10, basically, or the Elvish script for 10.
Okay.
Since he wasn't an official member of the Fellowship, but that Fellowship wouldn't have been assembled without the stewardship of one Peter Jackson. So that's my fun fact. What do you think about that?
Oh, that was pretty fun. I didn't know that.
My second fun fact is if I sound nasally or a little congested, you're not hearing things. I think I'm getting a little under the weather, so I apologize.
Oh, okay.
If it gets worse throughout. So I should just flag it mostly for listeners. You just have to suffer. You have to listen to my insufferable voice all the time anyway. So. Man. Would you like to hear about how the Lord of the Rings trilogy came to be? How it was born?
What
happened?
How did we
get here? The inception.
How a movie like this gets okay and made. You know what I mean? Because it seems like this type of movie
it's a fascinating saga. Yeah, it's not often made. It's a movie that, it's a series of movies that cost a lot of money that could have been, big failures. You don't really think of
I think the next
big
movie
fantasy epics as being hugely popular and having a lot of crossover appeal or broad appeal, So I think there's a fair point to be made of.
I think the next movie that was made in like this ilk was Dune. It's like the most recent memory of this.
Or you could say like something like John Carter tried to do like a big fantasy sweeping epic sort of thing, and it was a huge big bomb.
The big.
So it's a double-edged sword.
Big
potentially is big swing. Sometimes
miss.
you hit it over the fence. You get a home run, you get a grand slam maybe. Sometimes you miss and you strike out. So sometimes it is a bit of a risky maneuver to do we make this big epic project? Yeah. All right. So the preamble is this is not the first time that the Lord of the Rings was adapted. However, it is the first live action adaptation. So there were several animated adaptations that preceded this, including The Hobbit in 1977 had an animated TV special. There was the Lord of the Rings movie from Ralph Bakshi in 1978, and then there was another TV special that covered just the Return of the King in 1980. And I'm going to say, if you want to hear more about some of those, stay tuned because we're going to bring in a special guest. It's going to be Anna Mattis. You know it. She's going to talk a little bit about the ones of those that she's seen. I can say, again, as a preview of coming attractions, I have now seen one of those three things, but I haven't seen some of them. So we'll get there. We'll talk about those just as a little fun little side diversion before we really fully dive into the Fellowship of the Ring. That's right, more bullshit to suffer through. You are at my mercy now. The Lord of the Rings. I've gone power hungry. No. So yes, 70s and 80s, not much going on, live action side, a lot going on the animated side, but things start to kind of pick up steam, probably talking into the 90s, mid 90s, up to the late 90s, and that's where you're really starting to get some real development going. And so Peter Jackson has directed a few things under his belt, certainly nothing to this scale, but was interested in doing some sort of high fantasy film and basically is trying to figure out what's going on with the rights to the Lord of the Rings, to the books, to the Tolkien books. And so he finds out that they are currently at that time with a producer named Saul Zaentz, who was just a film producer, had the rights to it. He had I think he was like the owner, or at least something with Middle Earth Enterprises or something or another. So he had these rights, and I think he'd had them for quite some time, and hadn't really done much with them. And basically, Peter Jackson finds a producing partner to try to bring the Lord of the Rings to life, and wouldn't you know it, it's Mr. Harvey Weinstein, who everyone... I couldn't even finish my joke of saying everyone loves. Harvey Weinstein, now notoriously known rapist, piece of shit, convict, etc. Many bad things, shall we say.
I think he's responsible for producing like almost every movie I love. Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah,
that fucking
once
guy.
upon a time he was on top of the world in terms of the producer credits and stuff. But yes, over at Miramax basically start the process of making a Lord of the Rings movie, and Peter Jackson is involved at this point. And at this point, the idea is they're going to do 3 movies. They're going to do a Hobbit. One movie is The Hobbit, and then they're going to do 2 Lord of the Rings movies. This is the ambition. But then they find out, oh, maybe that's a little too ambitious. They basically put The Hobbit on the back burner. Let's do that as a prequel later on, and then they're going to do 2 Lord of the Rings movies. So treatments are being written to make these 2 Lord of the Rings movies. They're going to have a total budget of $75 million to make these 2 Lord of the Rings movies. And then, as they get deeper and deeper into the production process, I think Peter Jackson and everyone is kind of realizing $75 million ain't going to cut it for these 2 movies. And so he goes to Weinstein, says, I think I need more money. And Weinstein balks at this, says absolutely not. and in fact starts to push, say, if that budget isn't going to work for 2 movies, you need to make 1 movie. You need to make 1 Lord of the Rings movie.
He just makes it even fucking tighter. Harvey
So
Weinstein.
$75 million gets you 1 movie now. And if you can't work with that, well then fuck you, I'll find someone else. I'll get Quentin Tarantino to direct, or someone else. I think I believe that is a true story, that he threatened that he would get someone else to direct it if Peter Jackson wouldn't, fall in line with his demands. And Peter Jackson said, okay, well, I can make a 1-film version that's 4 hours long. And Weinstein said, no, 1 film, 2 hours. That's what you get. And
hard negotiating.
Well,
man,
Weinstein loses this battle because basically, they kind of come to a thing where it's basically like Peter Jackson's gonna say fuck off, and they're trying to basically sell off the property to someone else to see if anyone else is gonna make it, and so New Line Cinemas comes in, and their CEO was big on this thing. And he actually comes to Peter Jackson and says, I want these to be 3 movies. And Peter Jackson, who, as we also now know from the experience of the Hobbit movies being made, says, I will never turn down an opportunity to make 3 movies out of something. He's game for this. He wants to make the 3 movies. And so it comes to be, effectively, to jump past some of the more minutia of it. That's the iteration that comes to screen. This is where it really truly begins, is New Line coming on board, agreeing to make 3 movies at the higher budget. They bring in, some of the writers beyond Peter Jackson, Philippa Boyens, Fran Walsh come in. They write all new treatments for these 3 movies, where they can now include, more of what came from the Tolkien books. And it's not a perfect adaptation. Certainly we can talk about that throughout this episode, throughout these series of episodes, but really that's kind of where it all begins, is New Line swooping in and saving Peter Jackson from Harvey Weinstein. Let's be honest.
So now it's a joint,
not the worst thing that
venture,
Weinstein
right?
has done. Sort of. So Miramax isn't really involved at this point. You may perhaps have
I saw the
noticed that
credit.
Harvey Weinstein and Bob Weinstein are credited in the credits for the Lord of the Rings, but my understanding is they basically have no involvement at this point. I think it's probably a purely contractual sort of thing, where because they had touched the rights and were sort of involved before it really changed hands, that they were still owed credits. But I don't think Weinstein had any actual involvement in the making of this.
Miramax and
I think he profited from it. I think again because of contracts. I think Miramax probably still got a portion of
did
the
Miramax
profits from this movie.
contribute to the overall funds of the movie, to production monies, or did it overall all go to?
I don't know if
New Line?
that. I think as far as I'm aware, New Line kind of footed the bills, but I could be wrong. But I think again because Miramax had a chunk of the rights, or at least had some involvement, that they still at least stood to somewhat benefit from the movies actually being made. So I don't know the exact specifics of that, but that's my understanding anyway. Okay. So yeah, So it enters pre-production about August of 1997. They bring in Tolkien illustrators Alan Lee and John Howe on board. Alan Lee's kind of the architecture guy. He designs a lot of the cities and stuff. John Howe is like an armor guy, does some of like the creature designs and stuff for the forces of evil. So you're getting real Tolkien, purists, people that have been around this work, have understood this work. This is somewhat jumping ahead to next week, or not next week, but the next episode that we do. Christopher Lee, who plays Saruman, is like the Tolkien guy in the cast. Was the only one who had actually even met Tolkien. In fact, it's just really, really cool. And they get Weta Workshop going. Weta Workshop is a
powerhouse, is what they fucking are.
Powerhouse, yes. So Weta is it's a New Zealand-based special effects prop company. It was founded before this. I mean, I think they had done a lot of the stuff for Peter Jackson stuff because he himself is Kiwi. He's from New Zealand. But basically, they are the ones that bring the Lord of the Rings to life. And so I've just pulled a few figures here just to highlight the scale. This is the things that make this movie as epic as it makes these movies as epic as they are is just the amount of fucking work that went into them. The amount of pre-production work. So 48,000 pieces of armor were constructed for the trilogy. Not just for Fellowship, obviously, but for the whole trilogy. They made a shit ton of swords, both real ones and rubber ones. They made 10,000 arrows, 500 bows. Constructed about 1,800 orc bodysuits and about 10,000 orc heads. And then 1,800 pairs of hobbit feet were made, for the actors portraying the hobbits to wear throughout the entire production. And then on the costuming side of things, really outside of the Weta side of things, Angela Dixon and her crew, she was the costume designer. In total, they made over 19,000 costumes for the whole series, for the whole trilogy. So it's just a fucking ridiculous, costumes. Lavish. Yeah, it's absurd. And so to kind of put this all into...
doesn't even speak about set design and practical effects and all the other shit. That's just costumes.
So much more that goes into it. And those are all things to talk about that. Those are all things I think that we can get into when we talk either The Two Towers or Return of the King. I think basically I want to kind of leave it there.
Okay, yeah.
And I think we'll talk about some of the production stuff with The Two Towers and then some of the more post-production stuff when we talk about Return of the King.
That's a good way to do it.
That's my part one of the making of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I will note as just my final entry into this segment, the total budget for the 3 films for the trilogy was $287 million.
You shut your mouth. They made these 3 movies with $287 million.
Won The Flash in 2023 standards, or roughly won The Flash. Maybe 1.25 The Flash.
No fucking way.
Gets you a Lord of the Rings trilogy in late 90s into the early 2000s. So
they spent $500 million for three Knives Out movies.
Just for the rights, not even to make the damn thing.
Just for the rights.
Well, the rights to the Lord of the Rings that Amazon bought, I think, were. Oh, and they spend $1 billion on all
that was almost $1 billion, wasn't it?
Oh, I don't know. That might have been including the production stuff too, but I believe Amazon spent $1 billion on the Lord of the Rings or something like that.
$1 billion,
absolutely absurd amount. And we won't get into the box office returns here. I think maybe that'll be. I don't know. We'll fit that in somewhere. I didn't really think about including it here, but suffice it to say, these movies make their budget back and then some, and then quite a bit more. So
I'm looking at the Wikipedia, and the budget for this one movie was $93 million, according to the wiki. For the movie we're covering just tonight.
Fellowship. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Fellowship. Okay.
And I don't know how they come about that because everything's being made for the same trilogy. Like obviously, certain sets are really only going to be used for certain things, but I don't know exactly how they arrive at those figures. But figure, even if it's just dividing it in 3, maybe that's just how you get there, roughly. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, where would you like to kick this off at, man?
Well, I think before we get into the Fellowship of the Ring and some more specifics, I think what we need to do is bring in a special guest who I think is going to have a few things to say, and then we'll talk about the Fellowship of the Ring. So I think we're gonna take this opportunity and bring in the one and only Anna Mattis onto the show.
Hello.
Hello.
I am here.
Welcome to Lord of the Rings talk.
Oh God.
So we've brought you in here because it's my understanding that you have a thing or two to say about some of the animated attempts at adapting some of the Tolkien work, and then maybe you'll have a few things to say about the Fellowship of the Ring as well. So yeah, what I want to hear from you. What do you have to say?
Well, I guess part of this, discussion on the animated is because you and I watched the animated Hobbit recently, which was the first time you'd watched it, and the first time I'd watched it in its entirety in a long, long time. The animated Hobbit was my introduction to Tolkien. When I was in 6th grade, I was in the smart kid math class. And we, I don't know where all those.
She was looking for some flaws.
I don't know where all that math knowledge went because I went to law school, not math school. But we finished up material early, I guess, or something. I don't remember when during the year it was, but so my teacher had us doing, I think, like logic puzzles and riddles, and
in the dark.
Yes, riddles in the dark. And so part of that was we were, assigned the riddles that Gollum and Bilbo tell each other in their contest. And then for the ones that are actually in the animated movie, because I don't think they're all actually there. My teacher played the video. And so that was the first I think that I'd even heard of The Hobbit or heard of Lord of the Rings. And I watched this and I really liked riddles and I really liked what I saw. So that, sucked me in. And I think at that point, God, it's tough to remember because this was, 17 years ago, 17 and a half years ago. But I think at that point I probably would have rented from the library, the movie.
Blockbuster, maybe.
No, I think it was library. I think I got it at the
Hollywood
library.
Video.
We rented the movie from the library. Holy shit, I've never even heard of that.
Yeah. Yeah. But, and then that summer, I think it was that summer. Yes, it was that summer that I read The Hobbit. Now I can't remember if I might have read The Hobbit before I watched the rest of the movie. I think I did. I think I read The Hobbit and then watched the rest of the movie. And then decided I wanted to read The Lord of the Rings, and they were too hard. So,
well, you were how old at this point?
12.
Yeah, okay.
12. So, understandably.
Hobbit is fine, a little
yes,
younger.
The Hobbit's a little easier.
Friendly.
Lord of the Rings is harder. So I ended up that summer watching the movies instead. And I had talked to a friend of my cousin's about whether I was going to watch the movies before the books. And they were like, oh, just watch the movies. They're so good. And so we were driving to Ohio to see family. And friends of ours, some family friends, had, number one, a portable DVD player, if you remember those.
Oh, my goodness.
And they owned the extended editions of Lord of the Rings. So I think the first ones I saw were the extended editions. I think I went straight to the extended versions.
Wow.
And they were these sets that God, sometimes I think about asking them if they still have them and if they ever want to get rid of them to give them to me, because while they are DVDs, they had so much in the way of bonus features. Discs, they had at least 3 discs for each movie, all bonus features. I mean, just so much. And I remember buying the special edition Trilogy set in maybe 2009, something like that. And those each had 1 disc, and it was just it was like an hour of bonus features, and it was just like a fully like produced thing, but it wasn't everything. So yeah, on the road to Ohio, I watched The Lord of the Rings on a screen the size of a portable DVD player, which is very much not the way to watch them, but it was how I watched them the first time. Except for the last movie, I think I'd only like the first half of the disc, the first side, or what a first disc, whatever. And then we got home, and I had a friend who was, coming over for a sleepover, and I was like, listen, I really want to hang out, but like I have to finish this movie. Like I have to know what happens. Can you just like watch an hour and a half of this movie with me, even though you haven't seen any of the other ones? And to her credit, she did. She watched them with me, and proceeded to give all the characters nicknames, which maybe if I come back for the Return of the King episode, I will share with everyone. But anyway, so
that's a fucking epic experience with Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it was bizarre. It was yes, and I did the following summer finally actually read them in 2007
for the first time.
Yes, it took me fucking forever.
Probably many times now.
Yes, I have read them many times now. I have several. Oh god, I have more copies of The Hobbit that I can even think of, because I've got the annotated Hobbit, I've got the illustrated Hobbit, I read The Hobbit in Latin. It was included in my thesis. I took a class on The Hobbit. I also took a class on Lord of the Rings. It's
a class on Lord of the Rings.
And I did. I took a whole semester.
See what you're missing out when you're not going to school?
Mm-hmm.
They have a school awesome class on Lord of the Rings?
Yes.
That's amazing.
They do. At UVM, they do. They had one on one was Tolkien's Middle Earth, and we read Lord of the Rings and that and a few other things. And then there was also a summer class. It was like 2 weeks, 2-week intensive or 3-week intensive, and it was just The Hobbit.
Wow.
And that was awesome. That was a really awesome class. Both of them were. There was a great professor. And then he was on my thesis committee, because one of the things I translated one of the things that I read the translation of was The Hobbit. So yeah, and interestingly enough, I guess in that way, it was kind of bookended with my education, because my senior year final semester, I think it was my last semester, I was taking the Tolkien class, and so we were reading Lord of the Rings, and we watched sections and the entire thing of different adaptations, and basically that was Peter Jackson's and also the animated ones. So I know Colton talked a little bit about that, but so the first,
only to say that they exist.
Only to say that they exist, yes, and their years, because I don't know those. So the first one, the animated Hobbit that I'm talking about is Rankin and Bass. And it's very much of its time. You watch it, and it's so clearly made in the 70s, and is very much for children.
It's charming, though.
It is. It's very charming. It's very cute. There are certain things that I think it captures really well. Like I think it captures Bilbo quite well. The Riddles in the Dark scene is great. It's a great Gollum. They also do a great job with the songs, because there are so many songs. Although there is one original song in it that they repeat. It's very I was thinking
The Greatest Adventure.
I was actually thinking about how it's a lot like
I don't remember exactly how it goes, but
it's a lot like the song in Top Gun. How it just keeps coming back. It's like that. Like it just like keeps showing
a motif.
Little Berlin action. Yeah. Yeah. Basically, yeah.
But it's good. It's fun. It's enjoyable, and it's a nice way if you're like, oh, I like don't want to jump right into Fellowship. I want to have my little preamble of The Hobbit, but I don't have time to read it, and I'm not watching the monstrosity of the Hobbit trilogy.
Well, to its credit, it's just shy of 80 minutes long. It's a TV special.
It's nice
It
and
does
short.
not overstay
yeah.
its welcome. It's quite short. It's not 12 hours long like the Hobbit
nice.
extended edition film trilogy is. So, I mean, even putting runtime aside, I think probably to date, probably the definitive adaptation
Of the Hobbit.
Of the Hobbit.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I think also the book itself is pretty short, or at least shorter,
It's
and
330
and quite
pages in
digestible.
mass
So,
market paperback.
it's doable. I although I have not read The Lord of the Rings, I have read The Hobbit. So that
How many times?
once, but one is more than zero.
True.
One is more than zero. I've never read any of it. But I do
You
have
really should.
a thick-ass golden page gilded.
I know you do.
Oh, and I'm going to share it with the Gups when he gets old enough. We're going to read it before bed, a little bit at a time. Like, maybe when he's like...
Of the Lord of the Rings?
Well, maybe like, no, not right now. Like, way down the road. That's what we're going to do.
I would aim to do that with the Hobbit.
Start with The Hobbit.
We're definitely stopping with the Hobbit. Absolutely starting with the Hobbit. There's no doubt we're starting with the Hobbit.
Or the Silmarillion, if you want to just really go into the deep end. No, okay, don't do that.
No,
Oh,
don't do
okay.
that.
I didn't take any Tolkien classes. I don't know what I'm talking
I
about.
read a cardboard book to him. There's Room on the Broom is what we read to him just before Halloween. And he got pumped up about it. He was all excited to look at my finger watching, go to the words and stuff. He was real excited. And I read it like all rhymey and shit because that's the way kids' books are. There's room on the broom. And he was like, So, I'm excited about bedtime
He'll
He'll
Only
stories.
The
love the
Hobbit in a few
songs.
years.
He'll love the songs of the Hobbit.
Yeah, you'll have to actually
Because
sing
they're
them.
very rhyming.
Are there actual, within the Hobbit book, are they written in like song format?
As songs. Yeah, they're songs.
Nice. Yes, I will sing those songs when he's, a couple years old. He's got to be a couple years old to relish
For the Hobbit, he's got to be like at least 6 or 7. What are you talking
for
about?
me to read to him.
Yes. The Hobbit, yes. Yes.
Oh,
Don't ruin it for him. Wait.
okay. We'll wait. We'll do it. We'll wait.
It's also, the whole point of it was that Tolkien wrote it as being for his kid, and there were certain parts that like were meant to be scary, and they are scary. Like the spider stuff is scary.
So when you read the scary prime age for introducing your kid to Tolkien shit is between the ages of.
I would say between the ages of 8 and 10.
Between the ages of 8 and 10 in the format of
You
bedtime
reading it to
story
him.
before bed.
Yes. I
Perfect.
would not do any younger than that.
Okay, deal. We'll do it.
You got a few years, but something to
some
look
time.
forward to.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good.
All right, so
So anyway, yeah, I guess just briefly, it's the other animated.
yeah, The Lord of the Rings,
Adaptations.
Ralph Bakshi.
Yes. So Ralph Bakshi is a
This is the one I have not seen, along
Yeah.
with the ranking.
It's the weird ass like animated
Rotoscoping.
rotoscope. That's it.
Yeah, but
That's
it's
what I'm looking
really
for.
cool. Like it really is. So for anyone who doesn't know, rotoscoping was this method of animation that was really popular in the 70s and 80s, and Ralph Bakshi was kind of a master of it. Where it was, I don't really quite understand the mechanics of how it worked, but essentially it's animating over live action. So the movement is very real. It's proportions are very, accurate, whatever. And the style that Ralph Bakshi used wasn't just rotoscope. It was this combination of animation styles and like real, like drawn on photos type of thing. And then different styles of drawing and animation used together. I think a lot of it I tend to compare to even like Disney movies where there's the very 2D, animation outline, but in the back it almost looks like a painting. Like the background is a painting. I think actually another one that's really comparable is the like movies in the late 90s, like Anastasia actually, where there was this combination of the 2D animation and also some of like the 3D generated. It's like that combination of animation styles is reminiscent of what Bakshi did with his work. And his Lord of the Rings was I think probably similar to what you guys were talking about with like the development of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. It was kind of unclear, what it was going to be. And so Ralph Bakshi's The Lord of the Rings, that's what it's called, Lord of the Rings, only actually covers the Fellowship and most of the Two Towers. So it doesn't do the entire Lord of the Rings. And there was always supposed to be a part 2, and Ralph Bakshi was, always willing to do that. But there was it kind of got put on pause because there was this huge backlash. Because number one, you had the hardcore Tolkien fans who were like, what the hell is this? Why is it like split up this way? This doesn't make any sense. And also like just people who didn't like the style of Bakshi. And then also the people who weren't already Tolkien fans who were like, what the fuck, where's the ending? Because it wasn't marketed as a part 1. So people went in not knowing that they weren't going to get an ending.
Ooh.
And so there were some issues there. And then at the same time that this was kind of all in flux, Rankin and Bass, who had made The Hobbit, were making a made-for-TV The Return of the King. So I had always been under the impression that it was like, okay, well, Bakshi wasn't going to do the rest of it, so Rankin and Bass picked it up. But that's actually not what happened. Rankin and Bass was independent. They were independently making theirs. And then there was like a lawsuit and all this fights over like, could they do it? Could they not? And eventually it was, Bakshi stepped back and was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this. And I think the Lord
of the Rings also it didn't do that well. I think that was
correct,
part of
but
the
part of it was that people were
continuing
pissed.
Yeah.
People were pissed. And people did not like it. It's a very unique style. It was a very faithful adaptation, as I recall.
I want to watch it. I mean,
it's definitely worth watching.
I'm going to prioritize the Two Towers and Return of the King.
It's really scary. Some of the animation makes it really scary, but I guess that's, it's, in a lot of ways, that's what makes it well done. But anyway, yeah, so he never, it's kind of bookended the Rankin and Bass of the Bakshi, but like, they're very different. They're very, very different styles. They're very different feel to them. I will say a kind of consistency through them, in my opinion anyway, is Gandalf. I think they both adaptations capture Gandalf really well, and like the way that he is, this kind of lighthearted, laughing, but he also can be angry. And there's like a classic scene in the Bakshi where he kind of like does this weird thing with his hands at Sam and like scares Sam, and it's just it's very real.
I think
You've probably seen it. It's like memed, and it's very funny. Highly recommend. But yeah, and then so if you get to the end of Bakshi and you're feeling like, oh, I gotta see the rest, like then you can just kind of watch the Rankin and Bass Return of the King, which Rankin and Bass viewed as a continuation of The Hobbit, which doesn't make any fucking sense, but like whatever. I don't really get it, but I will say that the animated Hobbit and Lord of the Rings are very much worth watching. They're fun.
Yeah.
They're not as good as the Peter Jackson, obviously, but
they served a very important purpose. So I elected to not, get into it earlier because I wanted to wait until you. I do have a fun fact, sort of. It's another fun fact. I have many fun facts, and I missed another fun fact, so I'm going to bring it in here since you're with us now. So the first fun fact, as it concerns the animated movies, is Peter Jackson saw Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, and that is where his affinity for the Lord of the Rings began.
Wow!
So he, like me, saw the movie first.
He had
and
not
then
read the books prior to seeing that. He saw it and he's like, "Well, that was cool," but it kind of felt like, all right, well, it's missing a few things, and it, he felt like it. I guess yes, it felt incomplete. So it inspired him to read the books, and then the rest is history. And obviously, we've talked about it a little bit, but yeah, without Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, maybe Peter Jackson never reads the books, so it does serve that critical role. Yeah. The other fun fact, which I actually just completely stepped right over, concerns Harvey Weinstein, who we unfortunately brought up earlier in the context of producing an iteration of the Lord of the Rings. And I forgot to mention that one of the orcs. This is coming from.
Save it for return.
Should I save it?
Save it for return.
Okay.
Save it for return.
Save it for return.
Yeah.
All right.
Save it for return.
Preview of coming.
Sorry,
attractions.
I didn't know where he was. I thought. Did you already talk about how Weinstein wanted it to like be one movie or two movies?
I got into that.
He basically wanted to follow the Bakshi, method, but that doesn't work for live action.
And he wanted 3, and then he wanted 2, and then he wanted 1, and he got 0.
Yeah, fuck that.
Night,
so
baby.
fuck him. So, anyway, Andrew was visited by one baby Bennett. I believe he just said night.
He said night, baby.
It's
It's actually very funny because I like
only-
how it's in response to we're talking about Harvey Weinstein. You
Oh.
say, fuck that guy. You say,
There's some
bye,
separate
baby.
conversations
And
going
it
on.
sounds like you're murdering him, which good. But,
We're celebrating his incarceration.
disclaimer,
perhaps.
we do not actually encourage murder on this podcast.
No, yes, full disclaimer. The only rotoscope thing I've ever seen besides the brief snippets of Lord of the Rings is a movie called The Spine of Night, which is also, I think, the only NC-17 movie I've ever watched.
Spicy.
Have you ever heard of that?
I don't know anything about it.
No.
It's got
when
Richard
you said- I
Grant
thought you were gonna
and
say-
Lucy Lawless and Patton Oswalt in it.
What the
And
fuck?
it's pretty trippy. Come out
I
a
thought you
couple
were going
years
to say
ago.
Fire and Ice, which is another Bakshi movie that if you see clips of it, it's like it's extremely like horny. It's weird. It's absolutely bizarre. There's like
Scanner
it's like very
Darkly?
much like
Is that-
fantasy world, but like everyone's running around in their underwear.
Nice.
It's
No, I
truly
haven't seen that
bizarre.
one.
I have not seen that one in its entirety because, like I said, it is bizarre and not good.
Yeah. Well, are we ready to talk about the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring?
Are you going to read the entire cast?
Do you
list?
want to say your thoughts on Fellowship of the Ring before I read the entire cast list,
Oh my
or
God,
are
that'd
you
be
ready to?
Great. I would love
Are you
to
ready to
not,
hang out and
I would love
listen
to
to me
not
give it a spiel?
listen
All
to
right,
you read
give
the
us
cast
your
list.
quick thoughts on the Fellowship
All
of the
right,
Ring.
quick thoughts. So I try to rewatch most falls, if not every fall, and then of course it tends to bleed into the winter, which is always fine for me because I think of myself as following the trajectory of Lord of the Rings. Because while the books themselves take place over the course of like 22 years, the main events from when Frodo leaves the hill to, the defeat of Sauron is
Spoilers.
like 6 months ish. And it's from September to March. So I kind of tend to think about it in that, but I usually start it earlier just because when I first watched it, it was at the end of August. But I think Fellowship in particular is just like, it's such a fall movie to me. There's so much beautiful foliage in it. Obviously in Lothlorien, there's so much foliage, but then even when they're along the banks of the Anduin, it's just beautiful. And Rivendell too.
Yeah,
We were talking about,
shots
of
of
course,
Rivendell,
the shots
definitely.
of Rivendell are beautiful. And so it really has this fall vibe for me, and so I love watching it every fall. And I think Colton's right. It doesn't get old. It's just a really, really good adaptation. My personal opinion is that Fellowship is the strongest of the 3 films.
Ooh, coming in with a hot take right out the gate.
Strongest.
Something I'm sure that Andrew and I will talk about is
The rankings
how
toward the
yeah,
end.
but I think
Yeah.
maybe we'll save that for return.
The end.
All
right,
once
that's fair.
we've had a chance to reevaluate
it's
them.
my favorite of the 3 movies, but I don't rank the books because the books, there are 6 of them and it is all one saga. And so I don't have to rank it. But yeah, I think that these movies are really strong. I mean, obviously the casting is fantastic. I think particularly the hobbits are just so well done, and also Gandalf, because Ian McKellen he's perfect. He's absolutely perfect. I think the set design is just absolutely beautiful. I think the way that the CG is done is in a tasteful way that looks really good, and there's so much that they do use practical effects for that it really helps balance it. And I think one of the strongest, if not the strongest, aspect of these movies is the score. I think it's just everything to these movies. I don't know if you guys talked about it on the podcast, but I know Colton and I talked about really liking the creator, but feeling like it could have been like such a better movie if it had a strong score to go with it.
Definitely
because,
came up.
Fuck
Definitely
you,
came
Hans
up.
Zimmer, for fucking
I don't
half-assing it.
I don't think we used those words exactly,
You should
but that was
have.
the sentiment.
Anyway,
more or less.
love you, Howard Shore. A genius, just created such a beautiful score that so perfectly captures all of these different groups and all of these different moments, big and small. It's just really, really good. And I will say credit to Viggo Mortensen, because he's the one who wrote the music for the little song that he sings.
Wow, fun fact.
Yeah.
So many fun facts.
So many fun facts. The whole thing's a fun fact. The entire production.
There's just so much.
It's just,
there's
so
just so much that happened. That went into everything.
I would love a full blown documentary on the making of these movies, because it would just be glorious. Yeah. And they filmed everything behind the scenes too. Like, they had cameras. Cameras were basically rolling all the fucking time on this set, and it's just
I mean, you talked about it already, and I can't remember if I said it earlier too. But and if I did, I'm just gonna repeat myself. There's so much. I mean, special features, documentaries that are part of the disc sets, obviously. Probably just on YouTube and stuff at this point as well. But there is a lot that you can see if you go looking for it. But I would love to see something more of a retrospective now. I think would be really cool.
I'd love for Peter Jackson to do it. He's shown he can do documentaries.
That's true. Probably a better use of his talents than making 3 Hobbit movies.
Correct. But yeah, these movies are great. I love them. I love kind of a weird thing that I was noticing this time that I think really adds to it. I love the voiceovers. There's a few different places where there are voiceovers, and they're all just really good, and they just give the vibe of the books. I can't really explain it, but I think the opening with Galadriel, I think Gandalf kind of narrating the first stages of their journey while we see them moving, and later, obviously, Sam's monologue about the stories, which, we'll get to, I guess, in later movie discussions. But it was one of those things that every time I watch these movies, I notice something else that, I like the way they did it. It's just, they're
special,
really well done and really enjoyable. And I think really, you guys are doing epics, and obviously epics are more about either the scale of the production or the scale of the story and kind of the substance of it. But I think also there's something to be said about what makes an epic, and part of it is how these are classics in a way, or modern classics, or could become classics, maybe not Troy. But I think Lawrence of Arabia has that. It's timeless. And I think that really is how I feel about Fellowship in particular. It's just, there's no either seriously outdated technology or modern references thrown in. And obviously it doesn't have everything, because you can't have everything that's in the books. These books are so fucking detailed. But I just think it's a really fantastic adaptation, and just beautifully done, and really puts you in that world the way the books do too. And I think that's really kind of a special magic that only Peter Jackson could really capture.
Well stated. All right, any other thoughts for you on the Fellowship of the Ring? Should we maybe look forward to hearing further thoughts either on the Two Towers or the Return of the King from you?
Sure, I'll be back.
Okay. We're committing you to it now.
Yeah, you got it. I'll come in for these little
tidbits
corner, but at the beginning,
little listeners corner, Lord of the Rings edition.
I also will say this is absolutely in my top 5 favorite movies.
Top 5 favorite movies.
Top 5.
It's so good. It's so good.
The Fellowship
is pretty fucking good. Not to get ahead of myself, but yeah.
Yeah, I think I know my top 5.
Okay, all right.
If anybody ever wants to do an update of those episodes,
yeah, when we get to when we get to another milestone episode, maybe we should revisit our top 5 and see if our opinions have changed over the years.
After Dune 2.
Could be interesting.
I was just going to say that, Andrew. I was just going to say after Dune 2 so that Andrew can add Dune as a
Number
whole.
1, Dune Part 2. Number 2, Dune Part 1. Number 3, Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Number 4, Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. Number 5, The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers.
Where's Empire going there, though?
5.1, The Empire Strikes Back.
It's funny because in the past I would have said like, oh, you could group these all together like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, but now there's so fucking many Star Wars, and some of them are absolutely not my favorite movies. Some of them are my least favorite movies. But also I think there is like an element too, and this will probably come up when we talk about ranking, but just the difference between, you know, recognizing that something's a better movie, but what's your favorite movie?
Yeah,
I
think you can probably.
I always say that like
yeah.
I think Empire is the better. It's the best of the trilogy, but my favorite is A New Hope. The original Star Wars is my favorite of the entire.
That's I was actually going to preface my whole conversation about Lord of the Rings with a conversation on that because I went to a wedding recently and I was asked, because I was excited about this episode, I said, well, I'm part of a podcast and we're covering Lord of the Rings, and I could not be more excited. And they're like, oh, I thought you were a Star Wars fan. And I was like, oh, no, totally a Star Wars fan. Well, what do you think?
Imagine liking multiple things.
What do you
Crazy,
think?
Right?
What do you think's a better movie? I'm like, oof.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's not fair. They're just completely fucking different.
Well, they are very different. They are very, very, very different. The scope and scale. I enjoy Star Wars. Star Wars is a special thing.
Okay,
but
here we go. I think Fellowship's probably a better movie.
Right, but I enjoy
but I
Star
love
Wars more. You know what I mean? Star Wars has more things that are up my alley than Lord of the Rings.
Sure.
As an IP, right?
Yeah.
But
I think also like Fellowship, I'll just, even as much as I love the movies and as much as I love that movie, I'll always compare to the books. I can't help
that's
it.
fair.
I can't help it. Star Wars stands on its own. It's
despite the many books that came after, it's still that's where it all started.
But I would say that as a film, I think not critically, technically as a film,
Lord of the Rings is
a fucking banger.
Yeah. They both have some really strong aspects in that realm, but yeah, I mean, Lord of the Rings is
something.
Well,
it's cut from a different
we'll get
cloth.
into it a little bit more, and we'll
it.
talk about it throughout this.
Yeah.
So anyway, and I think we're gonna say thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for contributing, talking about The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, all these good things. Your experiences and stuff. You are, of the three of us here, certainly the Lord of the Rings expert. So we appreciate your insight, and thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Thanks for
Hans Zimmer.
having us.
And thank you, Howard Shore.
Yeah, thanks for
Yes,
coming.
and thank you, Howard Shore,
Yes, thank you, Howard Shore.
for creating this masterpiece.
All right. Well, I think I know we've already talked about it a little bit, gotten into it a little bit, but I am going to set it up nonetheless. Talk a little bit about The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, which was released December 19th of 2001. Oh, man, almost 22 years ago. Crazy. Written by Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, and Peter Jackson. It was directed, of course, by Peter Jackson and based on The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien, the first volume of The Lord of the Rings. It stars, to talk about that long cast list, I think they're worthy of recognition and a compliment in them. I think I should say their names, okay? All right. It stars Elijah Wood, Ian McKellen, Viggo Mortensen, Sean Astin, Sean Bean, Billy Boyd, Dominic Monaghan, John Rhys Davies, Orlando Bloom, Liv Tyler, Kate Blanchett, Christopher Lee, Hugo Weaving, Ian Holm, and Andy Serkis. And yes, I realized halfway through that, I was like, you know what? I did already say most of these people's names in the context of the first fun facts, but whatever. The Fellowship of the Ring is about a meek hobbit from the Shire and his 8 companions who set out on a journey to destroy the powerful One Ring and save Middle-earth from the Dark Lord Sauron. So, I think we really haven't actually done a lot of huge spoilery things other than Sauron is defeated. I mean, big shock that the bad guy loses at the end of it
Sure.
all. But I will say, nonetheless, full spoilers for The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, and then that will obviously be true of any of these films going forward. And I think certainly it's fair to talk about the other movies. I don't think we need to treat them in isolation, and people have fucking seen these movies.
It's 22 years old.
To this.
We're fucking old, man.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we're getting up there. It's true. I mean, no doubt. But yeah. So you said a little bit about it already, but now is your opportunity if you want to give some fuller thoughts, spoiler or otherwise. I mean,
on Lord of the Rings.
We've talked about it a lot. Obviously, we like these movies, but let's talk about The Fellowship of the Ring specifically.
The Fellowship of the Ring.
What about it stands out to you? What do you want to? What do you have to say about it?
So, this is what I've got for Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring. This movie for me, I try to revisit Lord of the Rings every year, maybe every 2 years or what have you. I typically don't go further than The Fellowship of the Ring. Full disclosure, I can't remember the last time I saw The Return of the King.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so that's a little fun fact for me. The Fellowship of the Ring for me is so rich. Everything about it. We'll start with the score. I like speakers. I like headphones. I like, I'm an audiophile more than most, but I'm not like in the weeds, right? The first thing that I sample any audio equipment on is The Concerning of Hobbits. It's like my favorite. I think it might be. I mean, there's a lot of good tracks out there, but I can't think of a song that encapsulates the blissful nature of the Shire, like just the tranquility and just the peacefulness, and it kind of like just encapsulates the way I would like to be. You know what I mean? And that one fucking track. It's an incredible track. It's so good. The Concerning Hobbits is so fucking good. It's really great. Howard Shore knocked this score out of the park. Because, on one end of the spectrum, you have The Concerning of Hobbits, which is just blissful. It's tranquil. It's awesome. It's like, why everybody wants to be in the Shire. Why wouldn't you want to be in the Shire?
Yeah. It's just so
like, we like
peaceful.
weed. We like our food. We like our ale. We want to sit around and grow things and be merry and talk to our neighbors and have festivals and birthdays and shit and build beautiful fucking houses and hills with beautiful doors and wood architecture and all the shit's awesome. Everything about the Shire is just picturesque and perfect. But on the other side of the token, on the other side of the coin, you have the dread of what the fuck's the place called? You have the dread of
Moria.
Mordor, yes.
Okay. There's a few options for this movie.
And the Nazgul, is that what they're called?
Yeah, the Nazgul, sure.
The Nazgul, and it's terrifying. Like, there's, and it's, it's a lot like life. You have places that are just perfect, and then you have places that are just absolutely fucking terrifying. Like the world has teeth. You know what I mean? And Middle Earth is no different. There is teeth. There are forces at play that are actively seeking to destroy, the way of life of the hobbits, And it's just it does a really good job of illustrating like the dichotomy of Middle Earth, like just the way everything is. And Howard Shore fucking nailed it. Like he just, man. I would, you talked about making a documentary about the production of Lord of the Rings. watching Howard Shore's thought process and how he developed the music for this movie would definitely be a very interesting thing, because it is a monumental score. It is incredible. Something else that's incredible. The characterization. There's a lot of we live in a world of Marvel movies now, right? Like superhero films, and these superhero films that kind of build into like team ups and that sort of thing.
Sure.
This film from Jump Street is a team up film, and you're introduced to a wide array of characters with vying interest. I guess they're all interested in kind of like one thing, but they all have like biases, and
that's eventually what unites them, but not necessarily at the outset.
Exactly, especially when they have their meeting where they're trying to develop the fellowship. You can see how chaotic and crazy it is, and that's kind of like the underlying note throughout the whole movie, especially towards the end.
Yeah,
where he gets betrayed. And he tries to get the ring. That one guy tries to steal the ring. Sean Bean,
Yeah, Boromir.
And it's all fucked up, and it gets hairy. But like the characterization, if even your passing characters, like you have Galadriel, you know what I mean? Who does the narration in the beginning and who's present in the film later on, and just her presence is the weight of her character is known. You know what I mean? And it's felt through the acting prowess of everybody on board, but it's also done through like the visual language of the movie, the cinematography and the colors and the way that everything's kind of edited together. Especially with the elves, any of the elves, you can kind of there's a gravity to them, when they're present. Especially, like the port, and that's another thing. Oh man, just the subtle like notes, the way that the hobbits act in the presence of every other type of being, because they're only ever shown the Shire. They don't know,
right? A little sheltered overall. Absolutely,
and then they're introduced to the elves, and they're like, oh man, these fucking people are angels, right? And they see Rivendell. And it's mind blowing, and it's really special because to somebody, it speaks to me because as somebody that hasn't traveled around a whole lot, who spends a lot of time with other people that haven't traveled at all, who is friends with people that travel all the time, right? Like I'm kind of like in the middle. Like the adventure and the growth that they have because the adventure that they're on, it speaks volumes, right? Like it's, you grow as you travel and as you go on your adventure. And it's really cool. I don't know, just the movie really speaks to me in a lot of different ways, man. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It was in your. I gave a best man speech talking about the friendship of Samwell and Frodo.
And Sam. Yeah.
Dude, when Sam runs out in the fucking water and he can't swim.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, he was just gonna drown. He ran out and was just gonna fucking drown. Gonna drown for Frodo, It's awesome. It's just the characterization is such a strong point in this particular movie. And like I think probably something that makes it really strong is the dynamics between the characters. You have characters kind of like in the know, and then you have characters that aren't in the know. Then you have characters that the know doesn't matter. Like Frodo, it doesn't matter. It's like it's just his responsibility. He feels obligated to do it. So he does it, and it's really awesome. I don't know. It's just really cool. So I imagine that source material is really strong as well because
one day we will We will read
One day.
Lord of the Rings. One day.
This movie ages.
even though we are older and have the familiarity, I think that reading it is still probably a challenge a little bit, but it will happen at some point.
At some point. Found a really good Audible where it was it's read by Andy Serkis. I think I might
that's that's probably a good way to do it.
But
he does the Gollum voice really well.
Yeah, right. The aging of this movie. This movie has a plethora of special effects that in 20 years, I only spotted one that looked kind of shaky.
What was that? Just out of curiosity.
It was it was of a dilapidated like castle.
Okay.
There's like this big sweeping shot of like this castle that's all collapsed in like this big field. I think it's where they get where they find out that the pass is being watched by like birds or something.
Okay. Yeah. Saruman is watching it. So
yeah.
You have to go into Moria instead or whatever.
Right. I think that was the most egregious like.
Right. I guess they go to the mountains initially and then their path gets blocked there. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I feel
anyways.
Yeah. But I mean, for a movie as old as it is, and you think about movies that came out this year that look like absolute dog shit, aka again The Flash, or even movies that came out around this time. I think about like the first Harry Potter movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
There are moments where it just looks like ass. You know what I mean? It looks like shit. And this one, there are fleeting moments that are like, all right, well, this is a movie that's 20 plus years old. But on the whole, it holds up incredibly fucking well.
I mean, we're watching a 4K.
Yeah,
we're watching a 4K HDR version of this movie,
and the level of detail that maybe you weren't even really intended to watch it at. I mean, I guess not really. The theatrical prints were certainly at 4K res, but again, like you can look at this with the magnifying glass, effectively with the 4K editions, and
it's because a lot of it's practical, man.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It just really goes to the heart of how they made it, and the amount of work that they put into it, that it's not just pedaled out of a computer, you know what I mean? It's just, there's moments obviously, but on the whole, just really, really impressive stuff.
Yeah, it's aged very, very well, which is awesome because the story itself is kind of timeless. The story is just, it's potent. And it's it's just really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, Fellowship's always been the one that I kind of start and stop on, just because it's.
Do you feel like you just can't do any better than that? Like you feel satisfied by the experience? Like what do you?
Why
think,
don't
why
I
do you
keep
think that
going?
is? Yeah. Why don't you keep going? Yes. I'm curious.
We got 4 hours.
It's long.
It's
Obviously,
a haul.
it's fucking
They're all
long.
hauls. But I just I don't know. I can't really it's just a very, very rich experience, and I feel satisfied after I watched that first movie.
Well, I do think that, I mean, to its credit, and I think it's somewhat true of The Two Towers as well, but obviously we'll revisit that in due time. Although it obviously leaves a lot of dangling plot threads, it still has like a narratively satisfying arc, I think, overall
it feels
of
mostly
everyone. Yeah, like, the development and sort of dissolution of the Fellowship of the Ring, but also just, still forging these bonds like Frodo and Sam. Frodo is in such a hugely different place from beginning to end, and Sam, his bond with Sam has only grown, and then obviously the growth of the remaining Fellowship members, who didn't know each other or maybe sort of knew each other prior to that, they've only been brought closer together and have kind of this goal of, let's save our friends at this point. So it's not obviously a complete story. It's very much just like, we still got a few miles to walk to Mordor, and oh shit, and Merry and Pippin are captured, so we should probably save them. But it does still feel like it's a nice stopping point. It doesn't feel like to be continued. Like obviously it does, and it is literally just part 1 of 3. But it does. I think the way that they crafted it, where they chose to end things, and how they chose to end things, it does still feel like it has a narratively satisfying arc overall. Even though we know there's more, and though there's a lot more to come. I guess I can see it as a satisfying, like, this doesn't feel like an incomplete movie either.
No, it's kind of like watching
not every movie ties things up with a nice tidy bow. Some do more than this one, but at the same time, it doesn't. I can see how you could just make peace with this. At the
like
same
I can
time.
watch Empire without needing to watch Return of the Jedi.
Sure,
you know
same
what I mean?
concept. Obviously, there's more to the story, but it's still a narratively satisfying movie in and of itself.
Yeah, So, anyways, we have Howard Shore. We have the acting and just the level of detail that each actor I haven't read the books and I don't know anything about the source material, but these characters feel lived people. They feel They feel true. Which leads me to the next thing, which is the world building. The world is so rich, and it's just so fleshed out. And I think that speaks volumes of probably the source material and the amount of people associated with the production of this movie that thoroughly understand the source material and wanted to bring it to fruition. There's a sequence where they're rowing boats. They get these boats from the elves in the woods, Galadriel's elves or whatever. I don't know the name of the clan or whatever. But they get these boats. And these boats, they're just simple canoes. But somebody built these fucking canoes. And they're magnificent. They're beautiful canoes.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or take fucking Bilbo's house. We're in the Shire for like the first half hour, 45 minutes of this movie, and maybe 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes at most is spent in Bilbo's house.
Yeah.
Bilbo's house is a fucking house in a fucking...
Someone lived there. Someone
in a
lives
hill
there.
in the ground. A hobbit lived there. It's a real fucking place. Where's that at in the world? Because they built a
New
fucking
Zealand.
hole in the...
It's in New Zealand. I can tell you.
Is it really in New Zealand? They've built a...
I think with the Shire particularly, I do believe that they really just kind of constructed a little
Hobbit city?
Hobbiton, sort of thing. Yeah.
Jesus. That's magnificent. That's incredible. It's tour de force. That's all I can say. The production, the acting, the score, the scope of the ideas. No, I mean the scope of the ideas of like the tale of an insignificant hobbit changing the course and impacting the world for better, to rid the world of evil and this and that. I mean, that's source material stuff, right? So praise the books.
Sure. Yeah.
But the interpretation and the execution from ink to film is just on a completely another level. I mean, you can have amazing source material and you could fucking botch it. You could make a huge piece of shit, if you don't do it properly. Yeah, look at that original Dune.
Yeah, there are ways to not do things well. And maybe, and I haven't seen it, but maybe the people that watched the Lord of the Rings in 1978, the animated one, thought, "What the fuck is this?" Because it wasn't quite doing it justice. And
Weinstein wanted to do it in one movie in 2 hours.
Right.
How do you do that?
That would have been horrendous. That's another fantastic example of there's just no way to do this story properly in 2 hours without losing so much of what makes it as good as it is, right? So yeah,
it's a husk, So I'm very, very, very thankful to have lived in a time to see a story like this
in the era of the Lord of the Rings.
To see this in theaters. I mean, we had never seen anything like this in theaters, and sure, some of it's nostalgic, but I mean, I watched it in the house, and it's just fucking incredible.
It's more than that, though. It is the nostalgia helps drive it. I think maybe the interest initially, but I do think that it still absolutely holds up on its own merits too, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned earlier, every year you watch it, you gain appreciation for it, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Likewise, it used to be cool Gandalf used to be cool, or not used to be cool. He's still cool.
He's still pretty cool. Yeah. I think so.
I remember the Two Towers. I played a game on GameCube. It was the Two Towers. And I remember the action sequences being like the coolest part when I was younger, but as I get older, just the intricate details of the way these elves live in the forest and the way the hobbits live in the Shire and the production designs and the score and everything else, it's so much more nuanced and there's so much more attention to detail. As I grow as a person that watches movies and as I grow as a person, there's just so much more appreciation for just the amount of work that went into this film, because it's not 16 people sitting behind a computer, even though that is work too, not to discredit those people. But there's so many craftsmen involved in making this film. And just the level of heart and detail that was poured into it's just absolutely incredible. It is truly epic. It's an epic.
It is. It defines the genre. I mean,
yes.
We needed to branch out of the historical epics because to talk about a bunch of epic films without getting into the Lord of the Rings is just silly. It would have been stupid, because this is, I think, almost in some ways more impressive than maybe some of the others we've even talked about, where you're breathing life into this completely fantastical world with fantastical creatures and, dwarves, elves, men. Men still exist in normal things, but the hobbits and balrogs and wizards and, just everything. How they were able to realize that on this scale, on that epic scale, to talk about epic films is it's just really, really impressive. And to do it in a way that, I'm sure there was a lot of money at the time that they spent on it. We talked about the budget a little bit. In today's terms, I think it's not, for films of the size and scale, it feels like, well, that was a bargain. And I think, again, based on how much money it made, absolutely a bargain, but still just ridiculously impressive that, that this was made, that it was made in the way that it was made, that today it still stands up, still, it stands the test of time. Wow. Yeah. Pretty fucking good movie. Fellowship of the Ring is, I would say. Yeah. Here, I'm going to ask you, I don't know if it's a hard question. Maybe it's a very easy question. Is there anything about the Fellowship of the Ring particularly that you don't like? Is there something about it that you're like, okay, don't love that? Because I'd struggle to answer that question personally.
So
I don't mean to take this in a negative direction.
No. It's totally okay. You have to be critical of the things you like. You have to be able to.
And most of the things that I love and like, I'm like, yeah, it's not perfect. I'm not saying this is perfect either, but I would struggle to answer that question of what is it that I really don't.
So me personally,
I love about this.
The dynamic of this movie. I always okay. Let me figure out how to phrase this.
Okay.
So this movie for me, because it is so long, this movie has, you go on this journey with these people, with these hobbits, right? In the beginning, you're all peppy, you're excited. As a viewer, you're peppy and excited, right? We're going on an adventure.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, we get to Rivendell, and we've been glued to the screen, and now we establish the Fellowship, right?
Right.
Exciting. Let's continue the adventure. We try to go through a gap here that's being watched by these guys. We go to the mountaintops, and the mountain's coming down, and then we find ourselves in Moria, in the depths of the earth. And now shit gets really, really fucking tense. The movie, if we're looking at it a line, right, in dynamics, Everything's been pretty kind of like mellowing, but it's building. It's building to this crescendo. And this crescendo is the fucking Balrog. And the death of one...
Gandalf,
right. And this is a big moment. It's huge. And we get through the moment. Gandalf is done, and Frodo sheds a single tear, and it's really fucking sad. And then we go to the woods. And at this point, as a viewer, I am fucking exhausted.
You're right there with all the characters of just...
I'm right there with all the characters, right?
This is just so much to bear.
And when we hit those woods, the character, like you said, the characters are exhausted. And there is this otherworldly, like, peacefulness within those woods.
Sure, yeah.
Being among the Lady of Light. I think it's got to be a purposeful thing. The way that it takes place, the scenes within the with her in particular, they take place within, like, they're kind of secluded. It's peaceful. It's dark. It's dreamy. Everything's kind of just otherworldly, right? As a viewer, I'm feeling it. I get fucking tired. Right? If I don't fall asleep during the wood scene, like with Galadriel, I almost certainly always fall asleep in the subsequent scene at the very end of the movie.
Okay.
When with who tries to steal the ring? What's his name?
Boromir.
Sean Bean. Yeah. Sean Bean always stealing that ring. I always fucking fall asleep during that. But last time, this
had to stay awake for the pod.
This last time, no, I fell asleep during Galadriel's scene.
Well, you had to turn it back on and then.
I turned it on the next day and I watched it. It's not I'm not going to say that it's a pacing issue, because I really feel that it's not. I feel that this movie, and it kind of benefits from an intermission. I felt like the extended edition,
because it gives you the pause. If you're watching it with the discs, it's like, this is the Fellowship of the Ring, and then it's like, all right, break.
Boom. That's it. Right. Exactly. So it's very much an intermission. I didn't take the hint, and I continued to watch.
Okay, I did. We spaced it out, and that was our.
And it's better. It's better that way.
Let's watch baseball now.
There's an intermission, and you're 4 hours. If it's truly an epic film, I feel like it kind of has an intermission, even though only one other movie had an intermission.
That was an epic movie.
I digress. I didn't take the hint. I tried to watch it, and I fucking fell flat, dude. I'm not cut out for the
especially with the
adventures of the
extendeds.
Fellowship.
And it gets more and more with Two Towers and Return, because those just get even lengthier with your overall runtime. It's just a lot of content. I mean, it is like the extended editions. Really, at this point, they're like fucking miniseries. You know what I mean? Like, there's certainly breaking points in terms of the pacing. A first, second, third act within that, which is obviously just a first act, a second act, and a third act in terms of just the movies themselves building the sequence of the trilogy. So there's just a lot there. It's not that it's overstaying its welcome or being boring with certain things. It's just dense, and not in a bad way, but it's just dense, So I get that. Yeah. I understand.
And the dynamics, I feel like the dynamics in this film are so strong. It builds up to that point to get, I keep trying to call him Ganondorf. I don't know why I keep trying to call him that.
Ganondorf from The Legend of Zelda, perhaps?
Gandalf. It builds up to that point of Gandalf and Moria, and then it.
Well, it's such an emotional blow. I think that maybe that kind of zaps some of the energy, in general. Like, it's just like, the air gets sucked out of the room or whatever.
Oh, but then Sean Bean, dude. For Sean Bean being such a dick, he had 2 high points in this film. When he's in the woods with Frodo, he's like, oh, you've got such a heavy burden. Don't bear the weight of the dead. It's like, oh, fucking Sean, you're doing a good job, dude. hold this fellowship together. And then he tries to fucking kill him and steal the ring. Asshole, Sean. You're an asshole. But then he tries to say... But then, yes, he's just corrupted. and it just
The hearts of men. Easily.
The hearts of men, and it just speaks of the amount of evil within the ring.
Yeah. And to the character of one Frodo Baggins who can withstand it. I mean, who's obviously affected and very much not himself, certainly even by the end of this movie and more so going forward, but can resist the temptation and the powers of the ring better than perhaps anyone else, which is why the task falls to him to take it to Mordor and destroy it.
That's just there's that look where everybody's fighting. Everybody's fighting during the fellowship meeting when they're trying to establish.
Right, they're all
the
bickering. Yeah,
and Gandalf, like Frodo says, I'll take the ring.
I will take it.
I'll take it. And Gandalf just kind of like looks at him and he's like really fucking sad about it.
Because he knows. He knows. He's like,
he just pities him.
He didn't want this to happen. He hoped that it wouldn't have to come to this, but maybe somewhere deep down Gandalf knew that this was the only way that it could happen.
It's just all the like little subtle interactions with the characters and their mannerisms and all of it. It's just
it's beautiful. It's beautiful stuff.
It's really next level. It really is.
It's the kind of movie that you have a couple of beers, you start watching it, and like you hear concerning hobbits, tears. Like Gandalf.
Oh, dude,
Gandalf,
don't even get me fucking started.
Gandalf, has the look when Frodo says, "I will take the ring." And tears.
Yes. And Gandalf gets whipped in the fucking ankle by the fucking Balrog. Tears.
Sam drowns himself. Because
tears
to show
Frodo. I don't know if you heard. Did you hear it in my voice when I was talking about this shit?
I could tell you were getting a little choked up. Yeah, I could tell.
Oh, dude.
But
Fellowship's a fucking powerful movie.
There's such an emotional depth to really this movie particularly. I think all of them, but this one, and I will say, if it sounds like I'm choking up, it's mostly just I'm having issues breathing through my nose right now.
And if it sounds like I'm choking up, I probably am.
Yeah, that's just Andrew. That's just how he does things. He's a dad now, so it's even worse than it was before, and it was already bad. But no, there's such a complexity to the story and a richness to these characters that everything is meaningful. Every moment is meaningful. Every death is meaningful. Every decision is meaningful. It's just tour de force. You said it, right?
Tour de force, yeah. I'm interested to see how it's been so long since I've watched the next two films
I'm
in
really
this trilogy.
Curious because I'm surprised. I know I just figured that you had seen them in more recent memory. So, Anna mentioned that Fellowship is her favorite. I feel like I've always thought of that being. Yeah, I thought of it being my favorite as well. It probably sounds like by default it's probably yours too. But I will say, I will hold my official rankings certainly until we get a chance to revisit all three of them.
Me too. I want to revisit them.
For them, but yeah. All right. Well, I haven't really given my full thoughts, but I want to ask you before I do. You have anything else comes to mind talking about Fellowship?
I've talked about what I thought was like it's not really an issue.
And I will say what I'm going to say is mostly just reiterating what has been said. So.
No, I think it's pretty much it. I really don't have. There's a couple of shots that I think that haven't. So we talked about Troy and like Sean Bean's in that movie too, and like the zoomies, the phase zoomies are like a cinematic trait that
it's an epic
hasn't
film
aged
trait,
well. Right. There's no face zoomies in this movie, but what there is there is the overuse of slow motion.
The slow-mo when Frodo gets stabbed.
Yeah. There is also like the fade in and fade out of certain shots.
Okay. Yeah.
That I think hasn't aged particularly well. But they didn't have drones in 01, but they use the fuck out of some helicopters.
Stuff, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they use that shit to like perfection.
No, it's
they
good.
nailed.
It's fucking good.
Yes.
I think Anna was commenting on that, especially the final battle sequence and the
yes.
It's
where like they follow, they track the hobbits and this and that running through the forest and stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh man, the cinematography in this movie is just timeless. I mean, ahead of its age. Mostly because there's like a few things in there that haven't aged particularly well, but
not a lot. Not for a movie
not a lot.
That's, I want to say as old it is because it's not that old, but in terms of filmmaking, 2 decades is a pretty decent.
There's a lot
of
of tendencies,
especially for something
change.
like this that is so effects heavy and so like a pure fantasy movie, like a movie of this era that was just set in 2001 probably holds up fine. But to try to make this sort of world, like I think there's a very real argument to be made that if you made this movie right now, it would look worse than this movie does. Bizarrely enough, right? Over reliance on CGI, not enough time with pre-production, making the right sort of practical decisions, and there's a way that you just make it. I guess the Rings of Power is kind of that. I think it looked really fucking good, but maybe there's moments in Rings of Power where you can think, honestly, this doesn't look as good as the Lord of the Rings trilogy does.
Sure. So there's and I think that's about it. I think I want to talk about the overhead shots, the helicopters and stuff, the way that they captured New Zealand. I think this is all principally shot in New Zealand.
This is tourism 101 for anyone that wants to visit New Zealand. Is just watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy and your ass is booking a flight within a day. This is total bucket list thing for I think for Anna and I both, is just making it out there. I think would just be incredible. Just looks it looks so stunning, and like it looks otherworldly, and I think it's just New Zealand is just that beautiful is really what it seems to be. That like for us Americans, nice places in America, some nice scenery obviously, but not like this.
Yeah, so cinematography captured a lot of the action sequences. It captured the scenery, captured a lot of the emotion. There was one other thing I wanted to talk on. Oh, the Nazgul, right? Yeah. The ring wraiths.
The ring wraiths, yeah.
Absolutely fucking terrifying.
It's scary as fuck. Yes. Definitely.
So you take this simple action movie, but like whenever they're around, do you remember that shot? For some reason, it always sticks with me. When they're leaving the Shire and they fall down the hill, and they have to hide Frodo's on the road.
Yeah, and they're like coming past, yeah.
Yeah, and it's that weird zoomy, like it zooms in, but it zooms down the road, but I don't know what it is, but everything it shrinks. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, scary as shit. And then they go in there, and then they stab the pillows in the middle of the inn.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely terrifying. And then they get their asses kicked by Steven Tyler's daughter.
That's right. Arwen, Liv Tyler.
Liv Tyler, yes, that's her name. And she is fucking angelic.
She told them, "Dream on."
If you want him, come and claim him. I think is something like that. She says. She fucking calls forth the fucking horse water. It's so cool. But when not to go off on a tangent, we put these lights on the back of the TV with the camera.
Yeah, I saw you sent a picture, so I saw at least a version of that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm still trying to dial it in. It kind of comes off a little bit distracting.
Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm.
But for this, it was pretty cool because when the elves show up, they're all kind of glowy anyways. But when they show up with these lights behind the TV, the whole wall is illuminated by these elves. You know what I mean? It made them feel angelic. It was really, really cool.
That could be pretty cool. Yeah, I can see that.
And the Balrog was very cool as well because that was just fucking lighting up the wall on fire. Also, one more note, and then I'm done. I swear.
As many notes as you want. This is also your podcast. It's not just mine.
The Fellowship ventures into the depths of Moria, right?
Right.
Second note. Fucking Pippin Pippin and what's the other one?
Merry
and Pippin.
Merry Pippin.
They are single-handedly responsible for every bad thing that's happened in this movie. Every single fucking thing is these two people. Every single thing.
Everything? I mean, they definitely...
they didn't forge the fucking ring, but I mean...
they might as well have.
Might as well have. You know? What'd they do?
Just hand deliver it to Sauron, you fucks.
Yeah. Oh, those fucking guys. Everything, I feel like
they're
everything...
so lovable. They made the dragon firework go off. That was fun. We liked that.
They fucked up the whole festival.
And it was
they terrified all
he
the
knocks
hobbits.
down the skeleton and the armor down the well in Moria, and everyone's just like, "Oh fucking hell!" Just 2 minutes straight of just being just wordlessly saying Jesus fucking Christ, but not literally Jesus fucking Christ, because I don't think Jesus Christ is the Lord and Savior in the Lord of the Rings of Earth, but in Middle Earth. That's probably the better way of putting that.
That's pretty much what they were saying. Yeah, everything. And I think, like in the next movie, they touch the fucking the Sing Stone or whatever the fuck it is. They're constantly fucking up, constantly. Anyways, that was a tangent.
They're part of the Fellowship.
So they go to Moria.
All right.
And
back to the first note. Very good. Yes.
They they kick the skeleton down the well and wakes up all the goblins or whatever, and they're running away because the Balrog, which they've built up to the Balrog the whole movie, which was awesome. Like, hey, listen, we are going to go through this terrible winter storm to avoid.
You don't want to go through Moria, right?
They awaken.
That's the last resort.
And meanwhile, Gimli's like, come on, guys, this is my family down there. Why don't we just go through Moria? And everybody's like, no, we're not going through Moria. Not everybody, but Gandalf, we're not going through Moria. We're not going through Moria. And anyway, so they go through Moria, and Pippin or whoever, the fucking skeleton goes down the well. All the goblins wake up, or all the orcs wake up and try to fuck them up, and they're scared to death of the Balrog. There's these flames at the far end of this ridiculous, It's the most epic, terrifying thing I've ever seen. It's so cool. And they run. They know it's coming. And then they run into this next chamber where there's like this ladder. And the camera kind of pans past, like not the ladder, but like the stairs to the bottom of the pit.
Right, yeah.
And there's hellfire coming up from the pit.
Yeah.
So my question I pose to you is, why the fuck did the dwarves continue to mine past hellfire? Like, once they reached hellfire, they said, "Oh, fire is fucking coming up from the ground. We might have reached we've reached hell. Maybe we should stop." You know what I mean?
There might have been more mithril. Who's to say? Underneath the hellfire.
We're just gonna keep going. It's fucking, they're lunatics is what they are.
Yeah,
keep mining past the fucking hellfire.
Got to keep their economy going somehow, Maybe the mithril ran out and hellfire was the next hot commodity, and they just...
Yeah, because they run... everywhere they're at before that is all dark and everything else, and then they're running from the Balrog, and the next place that they run into is just... It's literally hell. They're like... They're moving into hell is where they're moving. And anyways, the Balrog comes out there, and he is a demon, which is... ridiculous.
The Balrog has the coolest fucking design. I mean, it just has to be said. Just the most, like, I don't know, fantasy D&D sort of shit you could probably think of, but in like the best way possible. Just fucking badass. He's fucking dueling with Gandalf. He's got a fucking whip. He just pulls out a fucking whip.
Gandalf just fucking stands there and talks to him.
Gandalf is just, Gandalf, I mean...
Flame of Andor!
Yeah, he's fucking Gandalfing about, "You shall not pass!"
Is there more? I think Gandalf's epicness kind of. I mean, he does come back from like in the Two Towers, if I remember right.
I don't know. We'll find out. I don't know. I don't remember. Yes, he does.
But is it? I think his epicness.
But he's different. He's different when he comes back, and so like Gandalf the Grey, and I mean, he's just fucking awesome. He's badass, and I don't want to say in a more subtle way than some of the others, but Legolas, I'm so cool, and Aragorn, he's like cool, like quiet badass sort of thing. But Gandalf is a fucking goddamn wizard. You know what I mean? Like literally. So it's just cool. It's just cool. There's a lot I can say about this movie. I'm just like, you know what? I like this because it is fucking cool. And I'm not afraid to admit that I like things that are cool. I liked it as a child. I like it as an adult. I like it yes, you talk about there's things that you appreciate more now that you're an adult. Absolutely. 100%.
The bridge scene never gets...
But there's stuff that was cool when you're a kid that's still pretty fucking cool when you're an adult. And that whole sequence, the bridge at Khazad-dûm, the score in that moment is epic and incredible. Just Gandalf's stand against the Balrog, who this foe is beyond any of you. Like run, just every oh man, to Gandalf, just fly, you fools. Oh my god, just one of many incredible moments, but certainly a standout moment at the same time for this movie particularly. Just one of the most epic points in the film, and obviously again a huge pivotal moment of losing the first member of the Fellowship. You lose another one, obviously with the end with Boromir, but Gandalf dying just feels like a huge.
It's a massive hit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like maybe your most powerful member has been taken out first, and you're just. What do you do at that point? How can you not feel hopeless and feel lost?
And that's why, the second, the phase after, is almost purely about hope. When they meet the elves in the woods, it's purely 110% focused on hope.
Yeah, it's a Hail Mary at that point.
And one thing that gets me every single time is when Aragorn comes out of the Caves of Moria or the whatever, and he's like, all right, everybody, let's go. We have to reach those woods by night. And then Sean Bean says, for heaven's sakes, give him a minute, or whatever he says. And it's just cut straight through. Oh, it's, man.
Yeah.
Epic. Can't think of anything else. Epic. Anyways, I digress. The last point I have is the epicness of...
For now. I'm sure something else will come to mind. Since we're on the subject, I feel like I should mention it. So the way I did watch this was I watched the first disc, in one day. I watched a good chunk of the second disc another day, and then we finished it the following day. I probably would have finished it, but Anna was getting a little sleepy herself. I don't think we had quite made it to Lothlorien, but nonetheless, we decided let's just wait until we can watch this when we're a little bit more, alert, and then so we finished it today actually before we recorded, and I said to her as we were watching it, one of the moments that has always stood out to me in the Fellowship of the Ring, particularly when the first time I watched it to the moment that I watched it today, Boromir's death and the ensuing events just always stood out to me. There's definitely a bit of slow-mo usage here, which I think is fairly effective. Certainly more effective than Frodo's, stabbed face. Boromir getting shot with the fucking arrows and then just tanking through it and just continuing to fight is just fucking badass. Boromir is kind of, he's been kind of on and off shitty throughout this movie. He seems to want the ring, but also maybe he's just being corrupted and, whatever, you kind of boil that all down.
He's a real character.
Him kind of just trucking through his pain and trying to just defend Frodo, everyone at this point is just really awesome. But the moment where Lurtz, who is this Uruk-hai leader, we haven't really talked about the Uruk-hai, the fucking monstrosities that Saruman has cooked up. He comes in and he's about to shoot him point blank, and then Aragorn sweeps in, knocks him off, and there's this little duel. Motherfucker throws
his shield
at the tree and pins Aragorn, and Aragorn kind of slips out of it narrowly, and then it kind of develops quickly from that point. But then Aragorn has a sword. He chops off this dude's fucking arm, and he fucking runs him through the chest. And then this fucker, he's insane. He pulls himself onto the sword, just like fucking menacing as shit. And Aragorn is just like, fuck this shit. Just pulls it out and fucking decapitates him. That moment to me was, there's a couple decapitations throughout this series.
Not quite like that though.
But that one was the most like fucking epic, like badass shit ever to me. And I tell you what, it's fucking cool. I watched it today, and it was fucking. It was as cool as it was the first time I watched it, and I saw it in 4K glory this time. So it was maybe even cooler. I don't know.
I watched
fucking
it.
Awesome,
I watched it loud when he throws that shield. Because he sweeps in there. He sweeps in there to kick his ass.
Yeah,
and then he stabs him in the leg. I think he stabs him in the leg.
Oh yeah, he stabs him in the leg, right?
And then he throws his shield. And when he throws his shield, dude,
fucker pulls out the dagger and licks the blood off. And
like, he's crazy motherfucker here.
This dude's insane. He's unhinged.
And he throws the shield, and the way he has to throw his shield with like the spikes at the bottom to pin him in the tree,
the force to pin it to the tree. Right.
And it made a fucking thuddy noise with my speakers. I'm like, Jesus Christ, he's fucked. And then he slides out. Oh, so cool. Very epic fight.
Yeah, I will say, unfortunately, because we live in an apartment complex, the dynamic range of the sound in general is quite dynamic, to say the least. I feel like the dialogue's not mixed terribly low, but when it gets loud, oh, holy fuck, it gets loud.
Yeah.
Like, there was points, and like we know when we were watching on like a weekday and it was like 10 o'clock, we're like, oh shit, we gotta fucking crank this down because it's absurdly loud now. But even when we were finishing it today, it was like 7 o'clock or whatever, and it's like, this is fine. No one's going to bed at 7 o'clock, and if they are, that's their problem, not mine. Like there were still points where it was just like, this is hurting. This is quite. Anna was like, this is hurting my ears. I have to turn it down. I probably would have been fine with it because I'm like you. I like the loud shit sometimes, but I didn't. I wasn't like resistant to it. I was like, yeah, it is pretty fucking loud. I'm not going to lie to myself.
Sure.
So
definitely loud.
I look forward to home owning. Although to be fair, next time we own a home, we'll still probably share walls technically. But I look forward to owning a home where I can just comfortably fucking crank that shit and just, you know what? It's loud. I'm going to embrace it, and that's totally fine.
Put it in a basement. You'll be all right.
Basement, probably. That's probably the way to do it. Anyway, so we obviously have been here a while. I've kind of just responded throughout.
Yeah.
I think the
moving
truth
my
of it
mic.
is everyone has kind of said everything that needs to be said, and there's really not much that I can offer that's terribly novel, but I just do want to at least put it on the record and agree with everything that has been said. The things that stood out to me, other than everything, of course, is just casting was top notch. This cast is fantastic. The Fellowship, everyone beyond. There are others I think we'll talk about more throughout the trilogy, because obviously the characterization and the arcs will develop throughout. But in particular, I think if I was going to single anyone out for this movie, I'd actually probably single out Cate Blanchett, because I think her narration sets the stage, right? Galadriel is the one narrating this prologue, the events.
Just saw like what, 10 minutes of the movie, I think.
Yeah, it's just that opening, and you get this. Tell you what, another cool thing, Sauron looks fucking cool as shit. Badass fucking armor design. He's got the ring. He's got this big fucking mace or whatever, and he's just fucking bowling people over left and right, knocking them about. It's awesome.
What's that PlayStation game?
I don't know.
Oh, you know what I'm talking about. Where you
I'm
play
sure
as like
I do, but
you play as like a samurai guy or something, and like Dynasty Warriors.
No,
it's a fucking Dynasty Warriors situation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fucking 100 enemies on the screen, and you just you swipe your sword, you're fucking knocking 20 of them sideways. It's incredible. Yeah, but the whole prologue, I don't know. To me, Galadriel. probably been, I guess I don't know when the last time we talked about Cate Blanchett was, but anytime she comes up, it's probably, maybe it was in the context of Indy, where I'm just like, you know what?
Okay.
Yeah, this Irina Spalko, chick, she's not bad. I like her pretty well. But Cate Blanchett, to me, if you're casting anyone as like, I don't know, an elf that is kind of intended to be otherworldly and angelic, I don't know, man. Cate Blanchett is the perfect casting to me. Right? I don't know that you can cast anyone else that would take it to that level to for me personally, and maybe it's just personal taste.
No,
whatever,
for sure, Cate Blanchett.
But I just think she's incredible. She's got the right sort of voice for it, and so I think that in the prologue, particularly, her narration. I guess Anna talked about it a little bit too. It just really elevates the moments, and I think just seeing the brief kind of condensed history of the world is a really cool way of setting the stage for like, hey, this is a big fucking deal, and the ring, and you see the corrupting power of the ring. You get a little bit of the Gollum backstory and whatnot too, but then seeing her kind of, I guess, in the flesh. We don't have to talk about the dark version when Frodo offers her the ring and she's like that's like, all right, well, I don't know about that. I don't know about that business. But she really just sells this otherworldly quality. So and I don't think there's a whole lot of Galadriel really beyond this movie. Whereas I think all the other characters get a ton of play moving forward. I guess Boromir doesn't get a whole lot of play either. He gets some scenes in the extended edition, flashback wise, to share with Faramir.
He gets a meme. He's a meme now, so that's good.
Yeah, one does not simply walk into Mordor. I love Sean Bean. This might have been the first Sean Bean death I've ever seen in my life. The first of many. But he's great. He's fantastic. I think he's awesome here. Everyone is fantastic here. But yeah, I'll give Sean Bean and Cate Blanchett the special shout outs, I think, for their particular roles in Fellowship, which I think is where those two characters are the most prominent. Now, beyond casting, we've talked a lot about what went into the making of this movie. The production design is fucking unparalleled. It is ridiculous. We'll talk about more of the ins and outs of it, I think, in future episodes. But suffice it to say, it's stunning. The vistas, the everything is just really fantastic. But I think even the individual settings that you see. Obviously, we talked a lot about the Shire. You cannot say enough about the Shire. Rivendell, you cannot say enough about Rivendell and just how gorgeous it is. Lothlorien is the same thing as well. More of the tree sort of thing, but it's really, really, really beautiful to see. And everything just kind of has its own unique sort of feel and beauty to it. So it's a big, sort of, I don't want to say globe-trotting, but map-trotting, Middle-earth trotting sort of adventure, and you see, glimpses of Mordor and stuff. Everything still feels visually distinct while feeling like part of this greater world that feels very different than the world that you and I live in, but obviously has some shared, sorts of things. Yeah, so that stands out. Howard Shore's the fucking man. We'll talk about him at some point and just his process, but these movies, I think, would be very good without Howard Shore. These movies are fantastic because of Howard Shore, who his themes. It's not just one. It's not just Concerning Hobbits that stands out. It's every fucking thing in this movie is iconic and it reminds you of a particular moment and just everything. It's a classic sort of thing where you can hear the music and the emotions of a certain scene, like, Khazad-dûm. Like, you might hear that track and you think of Gandalf dying and people reacting once they get out of Moria, and that just sticks with you. Or you just think about Concerning Hobbits and you mourn for the times where things were nice and people could just smoke pipes and shoot off fireworks without a care in the world, and it kind of, there's a sort of sense of melancholy to it all. So Howard Shore, fucking man. Talk about him again. Fantastic story. We'll talk about obviously the evolution of the story as it goes along. And I think I might have some various thoughts here and there, but I think overall, just it's a tour de force sort of movie, and the way that it kind of just builds on itself. I think it's very well paced in the sense that, as we talked about, there's a lot here. There's a lot that it tackles. And I think look, we did that episode on Ink to Film talking about The Hobbit and Unexpected Journey. And I think a lot of the things that we talked about is, there's so many fucking dwarves and characters in it. And it's like, they don't have personality except for, dwarves who fuck and dwarves who don't and whatnot. But like that was the defining line, right? And then there's one that's fat because you got to have one that's fat for some reason. There's like so many characters in that, and like none of them are really iconic or stand out in any way. And I think it's somewhat cheating because here you're talking about I think a much more diverse and rich cast of characters. But it's to the credit of Lord of the Rings that like you care about all of them, and all of them kind of come in with their different viewpoints, sensibilities. Yeah, you have 4 hobbits, right? You have Frodo and Sam, and then you have Merry and Pippin. Like Merry and Pippin are fucking shits. We talked about it. You talked about it.
Jesus.
But Merry and Pippin are not annoying to me. They're endearing to me, and maybe some of it is by virtue of the fact that I think particularly in the Two Towers and Return of the King they pull their weight a little bit more. They're not just, what about second breakfast, and all that sort of shit. I don't think he knows about second breakfast.
They grow into their courage, as Galadriel said, right?
Absolutely, and they're just kind of on a whim in the first place, and they get kind of swept up into this whole fucking world-breaking, potentially world-ending sort of quest, it's
just the thing.
Yeah, it's really about their arc. Right, and so for each of these characters, they all kind of come in with such a unique sort of perspective on it, and some more than others. Frodo obviously has a very unique perspective, living with Bilbo, who had this ring, and was, I guess mostly granted long life by it, but still we still there's the jump scare with Bilbo where Bilbo clearly has an affinity for the ring. We will see the impact of the ring on Gollum, on Smeagol moving forward. We get hints of it here. Gandalf's perspective is really interesting, and his story and the way that he kind of exits stage left so suddenly is hugely impactful. And we'll see obviously how they pick up the thread in future movies. But again, like Gandalf just feels like he's the anchor. He's your. You got a fucking mage in the party, right? And you lose your mage, like, oh shit, you're fucked. Aragorn, he's fucking royalty, but he's descended from the piece of shit who kind of cursed everyone to Sauron being able to return through the ring. So it's such a, there's so much baggage to his history that's really interesting and rich. Boromir, he's a man, enough said, men are shit, so, but
he's also the steward of Gondor.
He's the steward of Gondor. His dad's a real nice guy. We'll find out about him soon. Gimli, son of Gloin. I feel like, we get a dwarf perspective, we get the elf perspective, and I think here we don't get a shit ton, I think, for either Gimli or Legolas. Obviously, Gimli is a little enamored with Galadriel, but you see the beginning of a friendship between maybe historically races who are not generally speaking on the friendliest of terms, and that's really interesting. Saruman, you get fucking Saruman, a corrupted wizard. What does that look like? And it's bad news for everyone. It's what fucks over most of their quests is, well, we can't go this way because Saruman's watching this. We can't do this because Saruman's fucking with the rocks. We got to go through Moria. Oh, there's fucking goblins in here. That's probably Saruman that did that in the first place too. Just shit like that. Just I don't know, man. It's fucking awesome. Yeah. I think I probably hit on most of the things I wanted to say. I think just maybe not in the order that I maybe thought I would get there, but I think I've really, I think through our conversations, we've kind of hit on everything there is, that I think is within the Fellowship of the Ring. And the good news is the conversation will not have to end here because we have 2 more movies packed with lots and lots of moments, some awesome stuff to look forward to. The Battle of Helm's Deep, some Ents, some fucking walking and talking trees.
Oh yeah,
maybe an Army of the Dead at some point. We'll find out. Lots of things to look forward to. So this has been a little bit longer than our other bonus episodes. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. This is the Lord of the Rings after all. It's the first time we're talking about it after many a year doing this podcast.
And never talking about it.
now we're talking about it, and you know, and I will say, you're talking about Lord of the Rings for the first time, you got to do it justice, and so hopefully we've done that. Certainly with the Fellowship of the Ring is kind of the first ones, so I don't think I have really anything else to add. Is there anything else that's come to mind for you for the Fellowship? Are you ready to wrap it up and put a pin in it, come back to things when we talk about the Two Towers?
We'll talk about the Two Towers. I think I have sung its praises.
What I will say is I think that the process of doing this has made me more excited to go watch the Two Towers.
Yes.
Because I am really, really genuinely curious to see what your thoughts are on the Two Towers, given you maybe haven't seen it in at least a few years.
I haven't seen it in a hot
like
minute.
so.
It's been a good long while.
As I recall, in my brain, before I really started to watch these with more regularity, the Two Towers is always the one for me. It's like, it's the middle chapter, whatever. But I think I've definitely grown an appreciation for it. So I'm curious to see if you will feel similarly or not. But
Yeah.
that is a conversation for another day, for another time.
For right now, we have an incredibly well-made movie, an incredibly awesome first step into the world of Middle-earth.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. What do they call? What's the name of Bilbo Baggins' book?
There and Back Again.
There and Back Again.
A Hobbit's Tale.
Hobbit's Tale. That's it. Yeah. We get to, you know. What an awesome journey that we're going on, man. I'm excited about it.
Yes. Yeah. Long overdue, but yeah, I'm happy about this first part of the journey, and I'm looking forward to continuing the journey with you. So, all right, should we wrap this up then? Should we say goodbye for now? All right, well, I will say thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, please spread the word. I promised there would be a plug at the end, and wouldn't you know it, here we are. Patreon.com/watchreviewrepeat. $2 a month. $2 a month gets you early access to all of our regular episodes, but more importantly, given that you're listening to this episode, it will get you timed exclusive access to our forthcoming bonus episodes talking about The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. And I don't think that you want to miss those. I think that The Lord of the Rings trilogy is something special. I think most everyone at this point in their life has seen it once or twice. Do yourself a favor and start rewatching it right now, if you haven't already, in advance of seeing, this episode on the feed. We didn't really announce it ahead of time, so now this is kind of, I guess, the first opportunity for us to be like, do it. Watch The Lord of the Rings. It's really fucking good. We promise. It's 20 years old, but it's actually, it's better than most of the shit you're probably going to watch this year. Which is true. But yeah, I think that this is such an awesome project that we're jumping into, that we have now officially jumped into. And we certainly want our listeners to be with us along for the ride. So yeah, patreon.com/watchreviewrepeat. We certainly highly encourage everyone to support us so they can kind of listen to this and be part of this. And I will say, it's not just money lining our pockets necessarily. We tend to, we've always put that right back into the podcast, whether it's upgrading equipment, covering costs, whatever the case may be. So it's not about, us trying to get rich or whatever. It certainly hasn't paid off that way for us thus far. But we do it because it's fun. We like having these excuses to just talk about a thing that we just want to talk about, whether it's doing the series of bonus episodes on epics, or just,
what's coming out
in advance of something new coming out. It's just a fun excuse for us to look back at some stuff that we enjoyed once upon a time and say, does it still hold up? And certainly for the answer,
the Fellowship, yes.
Yeah. Without a doubt. So there you go. That's my plug. I will end it there. Our website's watchreviewrepeat.com. You can find links to our social media accounts there. We're on Twitter at WRR Pod. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/watchreviewrepeat. We are on Instagram at watchreviewrepeat. And you can also, I think there's a little envelope there you can click on that'll get you to the email section. If you want to send us an email, if you want to send us some questions, comments, or suggestions, if you have something to say, you can send it our way to watchreviewrepeat@gmail.com. Yeah, I'm just trying to weave it right in there. we would certainly love to hear thoughts on the Lord of the Rings trilogy. We would love to hear thoughts on anything and everything. In general, we like a good listener's corner, and it doesn't happen often enough. And hey, special shout out to Bruce Brown, because he's usually the one keeping us going on the listener's corner side of things. But we'd love to hear from anyone, whether we know you, whether we don't. Hey, whatever, we'd be happy to hear about it. If you have thoughts on Lord of the Rings, if you have thoughts about anything out in theaters or coming out soon, or TV shows, just send it our way. Happy to look at that. Our intro and outro track is Mechanolith by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com, licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. So obviously it kind of goes without saying our next bonus episode is going to be The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. And I'll kind of leave it at that. I think the regular episode will kind of depend on whether you're a Patreon supporter or not. So I guess that's it. I guess that'll do it for this one. You want to take everyone out, Andrew?
Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Laters on the Minjay.